Thank you so much for joining us today. I am excited to talk to my guest, Michelle Leotta. She is a business mentor for health coaches, and she is the host of the Health Coach Power Community podcast. And I want to talk to her today about her industry, about being a business mentor for health coaches, and about health coaching in general, and about that field and how it's something that even if you're unfamiliar, you don't have a health coach, maybe you haven't thought about your health in a while, how it's something that all of us, especially entrepreneurs, should be thinking about as we go about our lives and where we are going to invest money. Because I think one of the biggest investments that people can make outside of the stock market or their business is in their health and in their brain. So I want to pick her brain and find out some of her tips as far as what we can learn from her and her story. So thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So you are a former corporate dropout like me, and I wanted to talk to you about your path into, becoming a business mentor for health coaches. I know you were a coach for quite a while yourself. But what got you to the point where you shifted gears and went into coaching?
Well, you're right. I used to work in corporate. I used to work at all the big ad agencies in New England. And when I got into health coaching, I thought, I'm leaving all that marketing and advertising stuff behind me. I can't wait to have this new career. Come to find out, a whole lot of being coach and working for yourself is marketing and advertising. So I had this gigantic leg up from the get-go because I just understood how to do that, where a lot of health coaches don't. They may have come from a background of, I don't know, being a teacher, or they've always been a stay-at-home mom, or whatever. They come from something totally different. I thought I came from a totally different background too, but there was so much overlap that's from day one, my fellow health coaches were asking me things. Michelle, how are you using the social media platform so comfortably? Michelle, can you show me how to start a blog? I mean, I was blogging since 2006. And so I would get questions upon questions upon questions. And so over time, I would help my fellow health coaches in various ways. And it just grew and grew and grew alongside my own health coaching practice to the point that I was running two businesses. And so a couple of years ago, it started to just come to a head time management wise. I'm also a single mom of two boys. Running two businesses on top of that was just putting me over the edge. So it took a couple more years before I was ready to say goodbye to my own health coaching practice. But I ultimately realized that my strengths were understanding health and wellness, understanding the health coaching industry, because I'd been in it for 13 years at that point, and having the strong background in advertising and marketing. So I'm better able to serve the community in the role I'm in now, where I can help health coaches who need it get their businesses off the ground and help exponentially more people get healthier. So that's where I've landed. But I mean, it was a very long road. It makes sense in retrospect, doesn't it?
No, of course, it always does when we look back. But I think that, it's interesting you say that because there is a certain limit that we have on our ability to help people. And so I think that's something where, I look at that with financial literacy and things like that. Like the more I can like have a broad, talk to more people because helping people one-on-one, I love, but it's also important to balance that, like, okay, how much impact, as long as the vision stays the same and like the ultimate goals or values, I feel like we can find ways that our business can transform, I guess. Even when, when you first started, you probably thought, once I'm a fully booked health coach one-on-one, all my problems will go away.
That's right. That's right. But I think in most industries, that's how it goes. In fact,
Yeah.
my 9-year-old, he told me the other day, Mom, I tell my friends, which I'm so shocked he's talking to his friends about what his mom does for a living, but he says, I tell all my friends that you're a health coach and you're so good at being a health coach that now you teach other health coaches. He goes, is that
Nice.
right? I said, yeah, that's right. And that's how most careers go.
Yeah.
Usually you end up in management. Usually you end up training those
Right.
below you. So it's a
Yeah.
similar idea.
Yeah, no, and that's funny. I have a 10-year-old boy and an 8-year-old daughter, and it is funny how they describe us. I think I've heard that I was like, the president of some finance or Wall Street. I was like, no, that's not. That's not all right. But okay, I'm glad at least they're out there being proud of their mamas for working. So
Yes.
that's something to be proud of. And you mentioned that you had that background in advertising. My background was in compliance, which is a very strange background to go from that to entrepreneurship. But I feel like all of those things that we've done in the past, even if it doesn't seem like a direct, like, oh, I was in sales here, and so now I'm self-employed and I'm a great salesperson, it does help. So when you started blogging, did you know in the back of your mind that you would want to have content that you could share and just blast out there, even if, back when I started a blog, I think I didn't know who would read it, but I just knew that having content felt like what I saw in compliance, what all the advisors wanted to have. And it was kind of hard to come by. So I would just write blogs about whatever was happening in the world or that week. How did that advertising background help you pick what you were going to focus on as far as, connecting with people?
Well, my blog really just came about as an outlet for how my own interests were evolving. In fact, my ex-husband, my husband at the time, at one point just turned to me with some frustration in his voice and was like, maybe you should start a blog. And kind of the point he was making was tell someone who cares, because he was sick of hearing about like, oh, I'm learning about this new healthy thing, or what about flaxseed? Flaxseed is really healthy. And he was just like, I am so bored of this. Why don't you start a blog? So I did. And I mean, it's really the truth that launched my career, because I did develop a following. And I had no idea what I was doing, much like you. I was like, I don't know what to write about. I wasn't planning on it becoming a business. It was just like a diary for myself to off gas some of this excitement that was building up inside of me. And I will say that my background in advertising helped tremendously, because nutrition can be really boring and dry, and nobody wants to read it unless you're a real health geek like me. But when I was writing, I had so much experience in the creative department at the ad agencies. I was able to make it sound fun, and I was able to get people to laugh and find it enjoyable. And so all my first clients were blog readers who were just like, I feel like I know you. I feel like, you're someone who can really help me. And that was fascinating, that you could launch a health coaching business and have clients halfway across the country, around the world, who were just eager to pay you and get started because they felt like they knew you from reading a blog.
Yeah, no, and it's so true how we don't know where I don't think most people have met their next client yet. Like they're out there, they're listening, they're reading what you're putting out. Because I think a lot of times they don't, if I wanted to go get a haircut, I'd wake up, I'd decide I wanted to do something. I might go to Yelp and look at pictures and look at, somebody, make a decision and then just go. But with coaching, or even investment advice, it's different. I feel like people aren't necessarily always thinking about needing us, and having something that's out there and it's consumable and maybe entertaining is a really great way to get people maybe warmed up to the idea of focusing their mind on something that may potentially not be that exciting. Like, I think, if you're gonna think about like what's going on in like Vanderpump Rules versus like the investment world, most people are going to want to watch E, and they're going to want to focus a little bit more time on that. So, how do you take something that could be boring or complicated and make it more, I guess, interesting to anybody who maybe is just starting out?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're so right. In these industries where people don't already inherently know who you are, what you do, and why they need you, I think content creation is incredibly helpful. Obviously, it was for me when I started. My blog eventually, years later, turned into a podcast. Now I have a separate podcast that's specifically for health coaches and the health coaching industry. It really is the mainstay of my business. And to answer your question, I think number one, you can take any topic and make it more interesting by making it personal. So it's not, let me teach you about flaxseed, which I think was one of my first blog posts. It's me talking about how I bought flaxseed and then I got confused because they just looked like a bag full of little bugs. And what am I supposed to do with it? They're really hard. And then I found out I had to grind them, but I didn't have a grinder, right? And suddenly it's more interesting because it's a personal account. So that's one way. The other way to make anything more interesting is to tell a story. It doesn't have to be about you. It can be a metaphor, tell a story that's similar and then relate it to the dry, boring topic, or tell a story about somebody else's experience with that thing. Any type of anecdotes makes it something that the human brain wants to listen to. Facts, lists of, just bullet points, that becomes very dry very quickly.
No, I think, yeah, if I whip out an Excel spreadsheet, I think immediately people go blank with fear that but I agree. I think there's a lot of different stories. There's a lot of things that we do every day or that we run across that has that a lot of people could relate to. And so I think it's such a good perspective, especially for people. Maybe someone is thinking about being a coach, or maybe they are a coach, but they're a little overwhelmed with like, how do I sound smart? How do I stand out? How do I impress people when they might just be delaying doing anything?
Well, that reminds me, I was going to say to your earlier question, and I forgot. Um, Most health coaches are like, how do I let anyone know that I can help them? Why would anybody trust me? Why would they think little old me, the health coach, could help them and their health? And my suggestion is that you don't try to convince anyone of anything. You're not here to like list out your credentials
Yeah.
or make a case for why
Mhm.
you're the best possible practitioner. Skip that. Just start helping them. Just get in there and help them. And so creating content is one way to do that, because if somebody tries your recipe and they're like, oh, she totally understands, like this is what I need in the morning before work, or if you give them a tip that they can actually use or whatever, you give them a perspective that completely mirrors what they've been thinking and a shift that they have to make, you've already helped them. So you don't have to convince them. They know that you can help. And that, I think, is missing for a lot of people entering the industry, because they think they have to prove themselves by like, sharing everything they know about gut health. But it's like, that's not really helping anyone. We don't have
Yeah.
to be topic experts. We have to be experts in relating to people.
Right. And I think I've seen some people in the fitness and health industry where they're just sharing pictures of them looking gorgeous, which I think a lot of people follow, but I'm not sure if they follow it because they want to work with them in the future or if they just follow it because they're gorgeous people. But I wondered, like, some of the other people that I've followed and that I'm friends with that are just sharing advice and tips and little pieces of information that I think is so helpful for people, because you really don't know what's going to click with somebody and then they're going to be your next person. Like, they're already decided that you're helpful. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to prove that you're smart. But yeah, I think that some people maybe are just, once I look better, I'll share things. Once I am perfectly healthy, I will start helping other people. And I know that I've seen that in the finance industry too, where people are like, well, once I'm perfect. And
Yeah, you keep waiting,
it's
right?
not going to happen, but it does. It makes us, because it's scary to put yourself out there like that. So you're the face of your business. You are front and center. So tell me, how did was it your background in not, what helped you get comfortable, you know, being a podcast host, and you have a huge Facebook community. So tell me how that, when it first started out, kind of the path to, you know, blogging to just, creating a community of your own. And what are some of your tips for just running a successful community that you're the head of?
I guess if I had tried to do it from the beginning, it might not have worked out as well. But like most things, you stumble into it. And I started, for example, my Health Coach Power Community Facebook group. I started it because I was lonely. I was working by myself. I was used to working in a big office, hundreds, thousands of employees. And now I was just like me at the kitchen table all day. So I really craved community and I created a group. I invited about 8 of my health coach friends who I knew were doing similar things. And it took off from there. I mean, for the first year, I kept it private and people would request to join and I would decline because this was just a closed community of literally people I knew and trusted. So we could bounce ideas off of each other, have water cooler talk, that kind of thing that I think all of us were craving. But after a year or so, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm getting so many requests for other health coaches to join. They need it too. And so I started opening up the group and offering more services for health coaches because I saw the need was there and I understood the need because I was having it myself. So that was many years ago now. Gosh, how many years ago? It must have been 10 years ago when I started the Facebook group, and it started like 8 people. Now we're at 13,000, and it's all been very organic. You'll never, in a lot of these coaching industries, they teach you to go into other people's Facebook groups and poach clients. And I mean, you never see me in another group. None of that. We never do anything like that. I
No.
think it's really tacky. Everyone in our group has arrived word of mouth, a lot of word of mouth. Even like the health coaching schools will say like, oh, hey, if you're a new health coach, join this Facebook group. So it has a really strong following of a very niche market. I feel very
Mhm.
blessed to have stumbled upon it.
Yeah, and I think that that's where once you find your market, I think it is if you are, it can be so scary to feel like I'm excluding so many other people if I'm just focusing on working with health coaches or if I'm just, focused working. But I think that that can be very powerful. Like 13,000 people in a group is, I mean, could you imagine if you had those people in front of you in a auditorium?
No
To
kidding.
talk to and to just pop on. And so I think that's incredible to just have that organic growth. But it's funny how it does sometimes just start out with that need for connection and
That's
just
all it was.
flying.
And I also had this overwhelming urge in the beginning. This is so funny. I was trying, I was building my own health coaching practice from the ground up, and all the other health coaches kept asking me questions and looking for help and wanting my time. And it would annoy me. I'd be like, I don't have time for this. I'm trying to do my own thing. I don't have time to help you with yours, by the 20th, 30th person who was asking me questions. Um, and so at a certain point, I had to make that shift in my brain from like, wait, how can I actually be of service? How can I be of greater service? Is this an annoyance or is this a giant opportunity? And when I started seeing it that way, that's when like the evolution towards putting more of my time, more of my focus on other health coaches started. But boy, did I resist it at first because in my head, I was like, no, I am going to be a health coach. I believe in health and wellness, and this is what I want to do. When really, I think the opportunity for me in my career is combining the background of advertising, like I said, with the health and wellness stuff. But it's so funny how like your brain will tell you no to like what is potentially your greatest opportunity.
No, I agree. I think our brains want to keep us exactly the way we have been because it's kept us alive. And you being a health coach is not with no evidence that you're going to be successful or be able to take care of your children or be able to pay your bills, like is terrifying to your brain. Like absolutely terrifying. So I think it's great that sometimes we have to question our own thoughts and poke holes at them and see if they're actually facts or if they're just thoughts that we've
That's
had over
right.
and over again. And I'm curious about your, you know, everything you've done has been because you care about health and wellness. Have you always been a healthy person? Or was there anything that happened, that kind of made you focus more intensely in that area of your life?
No, I was actually a pretty unhealthy person at one point. I was having a series of health issues that started as a teenager with fainting episodes. I went through college, continuing to experience those, as well as like looking back, some really horrible anxiety and digestion problems. But as with anything that we suffer with for a long period of time, a lot of times we just think it's normal, especially if it's been lifelong, especially if it started slowly. And so we didn't notice it one day because it had just always been there. So by the time I was in my early 20s and I was working in advertising, it had really got to a point that I was not functioning well. I was exhausted. I couldn't drag, notoriously creatives in the ad industry get to work late. So I couldn't even drag myself into work until about 10 a.m. Luckily, they didn't mind too much because everybody else was doing the same thing. But I felt terrible. I was needing to lie down at work maybe once, twice a week because I was dizzy. And so I was like, this is not normal. And I started to go to the doctor, and I had been going to doctors for years telling them this stuff. And they were just like, we don't know. We don't know. Your blood work is fine. Everything is fine. And I finally went to the doctor for like the third time. I was about 22 years old. And I said, I must have mono because that's how exhausted I am. And they did my blood work and they're like, you don't have mono. You are fine. Then we're getting frustrated. And when the doctor left, I just burst into tears because I'm like, nobody can help me. But I mean, it felt really dangerous because I would pass out like on the subway. I'd be like at the downtown crossing T station in Boston, like finding a place where I could comfortably pass out in the corner. That's not how you want to be living your life. I would like tuck my purse between my body and the wall and like let myself conk out against the wall. So my
I don't think the T stations are safe places recently, period.
no,
Walk
no, no,
around,
no.
so passing out, but that is terrifying and how frustrating for them to just say you're fine because the tests they're running, probably to check for certain things, but they're not really looking for a solution. So how did you start to get better?
Well, the nurse that day, when I was bawling in the doctor's office, she looked at me with some contempt and she was like, have you seen a therapist? And I was like, no, but maybe I should because I don't know what else to do. So I went to a therapist. The therapist was like, have you considered anti anxiety medication? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't have anxiety. uh so I started doing yoga because I heard yoga was good for anxiety, right? So I did that and then slowly started to change my diet and my lifestyle because once you get into a yoga class, they start talking to you about what you're eating. You start realizing, oh my gosh, my belly's making a lot of noises and it's embarrassing. So over the course of probably 6 to 12 months, I really did a 180 with how I was taking care of myself. All my symptoms disappeared. And it was like this huge light bulb moment. That's where my passion for health and wellness comes from because I was really going down a, to a bad place with my health until some very simple changes turned it around.
Uh, that's thank you for sharing that story. I think there's probably a lot of people listening, especially since there's a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs that listen to this show that maybe or people who are considering work that are uncomfortable all the time. Now, I don't think that you can, well, as far as financial success, it's very hard to be at the top of your, maybe you're great in like your work, but if your health and your family or your life is really falling apart or suffering, um, that can be, you're right, it can kind of sneak up. And
It
then,
really does. And it impacts everything, right? It impacts your productivity. It impacts your relationships with the people
yeah,
around you. It impacts, your stamina to get things done. And so, especially for entrepreneurs,
yeah.
I found now running my own business that it's like, if I don't prioritize my health, if I don't wake up in the morning ready to go and get the
Mhm.
stuff done, the business will just fall apart.
Right. Yeah, there's a pressure there, but then that's also, I think, more of like a motivation. Like I feel like my health has always been something that I've cared about. It used to be a lot easier, I'd say, before I was in my 40s, where I would feel like refreshed and fine after staying out. So I go to sleep at a particular time because it feels better. And I try to, I hired a new nutrition coach to learn about food because I didn't really know the difference. And I know in my space, if people talk about, certain financial projections or, investment options and things like that, it can be confusing. So I was thinking about how, like, to me, like a macro, I didn't know what that meant. Or like why I would need to eat certain amounts of protein and why, until I actually asked for someone to help me figure that part out. And now it makes sense and I understand it and feel more in control of it. But like that's an investment that most people might be like, that's not important. Put the money in the business. Put the money into this. Hire help for this. And then just continue to like run on empty all the time. So I think health coaching in particular might be a very lucrative opportunity, especially as Americans continue to eat a very lousy diet and get older. So what are some of the things you're seeing as far as like trends in the health coaching industry, and it's grown, I've known, significantly. I saw in Forbes that, I think it was up 34% from 2019 to 2022. I have to think that COVID might have had some sort of impact on that. But that is a huge amount of growth and potential for people who are thinking about the business. So, from your perspective, what are you seeing people out there looking for? And how can a health coach kind of help fill that gap between, feeling lousy and wanting to feel better, and then actually getting people to focus on their health?
You're right. The industry has exploded, and that is a really cool thing. We now have a national board, a governing body that has popped up to start sort of regulating the field. This is all new in the past couple of years. And so health coaches have more opportunities than ever. I went in the direction of starting my own online business. I love it. I love the flexibility that it's given me and the income potential that it's given me. Other health coaches these days are finding opportunities to work within medical practices, particularly functional medicine practices. Still, with standard medicine, it's a bit hard to get in the door, and there can be some backlash from the traditional medical community because health coaches might be seen as a bit woo-woo or unnecessary, or not credentialed enough. But I'm really seeing in the functional medicine world a push towards integrating the doctors with the health coaches and the patients. Frankly, it makes better business sense for them because the doctor can only see so many people per day, and they can't meet with those clients on a weekly or every other week basis, but a health coach can. So they get better outcomes by having health coaches on staff. So there are opportunities to be working with other organizations for sure. And in fact, some companies are even hiring a health coach to work in-house, within their own corporation. I would say that's a little less common, but those opportunities are available as well. So it's changing, it's growing. It's been really fascinating to just watch the shift. And I think when we talk about health and wellness coaching, we think first and foremost about weight loss. Like you said, people posting pictures of themselves, posing in bikinis. That's part of it, sure. And a lot of people want to lose weight, so there's nothing wrong with that. But more and more, I'm seeing health coaches filling in the gaps with chronic disease, because the medical establishment is really great with acute problems like a broken leg, or you need to have an operation. Fine, that's great, that's what they're very good at. But when it comes to something like autoimmune disease, a woman can go, I think the average is 8 years without getting a diagnosis, proper diagnosis. And in the meantime, she feels horrible. She doesn't understand what's happening to her. Not only is she gaining weight, but her hair is falling out, her skin is dry, she's experiencing all these other terrible symptoms. And she's getting, like I did, a whole lot of going, you're fine. Oh, we don't know. We did blood work. It looks okay. So it's super frustrating. This, I think, is the biggest opportunity for health coaches, because we're helping people live better in between what they need their doctors for. Doctors are good for certain things, but they're really not that helpful in these situations of, why am I so exhausted every morning? If you say that to your doctor, they're just going to shrug their shoulders and say, go to bed earlier. But in fact, it could be a whole host of reasons. It could be a food intolerance. And so I think health coaches really are filling the gaps and helping people live better lives, whether they are in a doctor's care or not.
It's such an important piece of it, because you're right. A lot of people are going to the doctor and all they're telling them to do is like lose weight.
Yeah, eat less, move more. I mean,
Yes.
thanks,
Yeah.
but no thanks. After
Yeah.
40, especially if you have something like an autoimmune disease, that advice just does not do it.
Right. That'd be like if I was like, my financial plans were like, spend less than you make.
Yes.
Go on your way. I don't care if you have certain emotional triggers that make you overspend. I don't care. Like, that sounds complicated and messy. Just look at your check, your budget, and spend
Balance the
less.
numbers.
There you go. Easy. Like, everyone would be perfect if it was that easy. So, and I can't think of wow, anybody that I've went to, whether it was, you know, at some point, in middle age or, after an injury, maybe a slow recovery or, childbirth, menopause, where people aren't just like, I don't like the way I feel. And they will turn to other outlets to feel better, whether it's sometimes it's overspending, sometimes it's eating, drinking, sometimes it's over exercise, overdoing it. Like we're trying to find solutions on our own. And it can get expensive, it can get terrifying, and like it could still not work. So I'm excited to see an increase in functional medicine and in the coaching space where people are actually thinking about like the root causes
Mhm.
so they can address that instead of just trying to be like, okay, like I noticed, and I have to like mention yesterday, because I follow a lot of, the stock market and the tech and pharmaceutical space. I saw that Weight Watchers stock went up 70% after they acquired Sequence, which is
Mhm.
it's a tech platform for obesity, and they were exploring medications and that whole, weight loss medications and things like that, the quick fixes. And so this is a big business. This is huge. But I think that, a lot of times when people are looking for the quick fix and the shortcut, it's harder. But, I don't know. I don't know if it's sustainable. So I think the coaching part of it has to kind of supplement what is
The health
out
and
there
wellness
as an
industry is
answer.
a crazy, crazy place. You're right.
Yeah,
Billions and billions and billions of dollars are
so
being
much money.
spent, but rarely are the results something that lasts,
Yeah.
right? That's why it's such a billion
Yeah.
dollar industry, because multi-billion dollar
You're
industry,
always
people,
chasing it, right?
that's right.
Like,
You
yeah.
continue to chase, you continue to chase. The finest compliment I ever received was from one of the clients that I was coaching. And she said, Michelle, this has been life changing. She's someone who had been sent to fat camp when she was 8 years old, and she was now in her 40s, still struggling with her weight. And she said, you are going to put yourself out of business, because the way this industry works is I do what you say, or I follow a plan. It
And
works for
then
a
you're
little while, and then I have to do it again and again and again and again. And she goes, and now I feel like I'm not going to have to do this again and again. She's like, you're going to put yourself out of business. I want you to know that. And I was like, I hope I
yeah.
can put myself out of
No,
business.
seriously, like if everybody understood how to, how to start investing, how to like, look at their money without feeling like they're going to throw up or afraid. Like if I put myself out of a job because like so many people like have now like this newfound amount of financial literacy, good. I'll find something else to do. Like that sounds like, isn't that the ultimate goal though? Is to help people so much that they don't really, maybe they don't need you anymore. Maybe they still work with you because they choose to and they want to, and maybe they, you know, enjoy, like that's great. But like, I feel like people are, yeah, becoming so dependent on like, well, let's try something different. That didn't work. Let's try the next thing. And
That's
so
right.
I can see how this business could just grow. But I love, for people like that you work with. So I know health coaching and coaching in general is not an easy industry, but you've said that it's starting to get more regulated and more credentialed. So, how would somebody who was thinking about it start on that path if they're really interested in making this their job for the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. So before you invest money at all anywhere, I would suggest that you start learning on your own. You start creating community around what you're doing. So, for example, maybe you love to run and you're a vegan. And so you go on like meetup.com and create the vegan runners group, whatever, because it's going to allow you the chance to see if you like talking about this stuff a lot, meet other people who are interested. This will only fuel your business later. So, what I did, as I mentioned, was I had started that blog. I had a readership, right? I had some practice talking about this topic. I understood what people were interested in, what maybe people weren't so interested based on the stats that I was getting. And so when it came time to say, I'm ready to take on clients, like I already had this audience. So I would say first start building that audience, which feels a little backwards. But if it doesn't work out, if you don't like it, whatever, you don't end up proceeding with your health coaching career, no harm, no foul. What I don't like is when people just jump into one of these health coach certification programs because they're fairly costly, and then find out that this is not something that you want to do,
Oh, I've
right?
seen that so much where people think that they have to, and I was guilty of this. I felt like if I get another designation, then people will just appear and people will want to, and like, I think that that is another trick that our brain plays on us to be like, all right, let's learn more instead of actually going out there and putting yourself at risk of hearing, no, I'm not interested, or no, I don't, this isn't something that I would pay for. I think I can't like I saw something recently in a business Facebook group where someone was just like, this is what I offer. Like, what would you pay for it? And just put that out there to the to the world. And I was like, interesting. She's gonna hear ranges from $1,000, thousands of dollars to nothing. I said there's always gonna be, so I think finding your community and growing that audience or just talking to more people that are really like similar minded than you can be such a smart way to even just have a more maybe warm audience to test things out with and see like,
Yeah,
is this
exactly.
important, is this helpful, and if you're engaging with your own community and providing value for them or sharing their tips and posts, or I think it's very easy to kind of start to build that strong community. So you have, because yeah, just going out there and getting the certification, like I had somebody ask me like, if I become a CFP, do you think I'm going to be that I'll be able to leave this job and be successful? And I was like, no. Like, not just by getting it, like people aren't like, there's people looking for us, but there's a lot more, like you have to be, she was very much like, I don't want to have to find clients or like sell or any or talk about that. And so it was like, oh no, like not really, maybe a corporate role would be better, something different to use those skills, because it's not for everyone. So I think that's such a great tip for those entrepreneurs who, maybe are looking at that course and being like, that's it. That's
Right, because
the answer.
it's not it. It will be one path or one step along the path. So I actually have a resource I can
Mhm.
share. It's a free resource for anyone who's interested in becoming a health coach. Just shares a little bit more about like my experience going through the process. I talk about the school that I went to, just so you could feel from the inside like how this goes. And it's not as simple as just I sign up for the school, I get a certification, and the next day I have a roster full of paying clients. It really doesn't go like that. So anyway, if you have any listeners that are considering health coaching, you can go to healthcoachpower.com/become a coach. And there's a free mini course there on the steps that you would want to go through in
Yeah.
becoming a health coach. And these days, there are so many health coaching schools. Like when I started, there were two.
Yeah.
And now I think there's got to be hundreds and hundreds.
Hmm.
So, another thing that I want to say is it doesn't matter. And you also don't even have to go to school to call yourself a health coach. This part of the industry, as of right now, is not regulated.
Yeah.
Anybody can call themselves a health coach. Now, if you want to be board certified, you do have to go to a certain schools that are accredited. You have to then sit for the national board test to qualify. And when you have that certification, you're more likely to get jobs with the functional medicine
Okay.
clinics, et
Hmm.
cetera. But if you're going to work for yourself, clients, normal, everyday people out there, they don't know, they don't give a damn if you have this certification or that certification. Again, they just want to know you can help
You
them.
help them. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. That is so true. It's the same with I have a life coaching certification basically just because I thought it would help supplement that end of my financial planning and investing, because a lot of what my clients are talking about is not about their specific account or what they have. They're
right,
like,
it's the money.
they're afraid, or they're nervous, or maybe they feel like they're giving their money away to maybe their adult children, and then they're nervous and they feel bad, and there's all sorts of emotions tied around the financial decisions we make. Every financial decision we make is because we think it's going to make us feel better. Like, we can definitely, I think a lot of people can benefit from coach, training and learning. So that's good to know that there's two paths, because really anybody could call themselves a life coach as well. There's no,
Mm-hmm.
not everyone could say they're a CFP. They would get in huge trouble. It's super highly regulated, where that path was a little bit different. So it was interesting for me to kind of see that and be like, what? You don't have to like sit for a 3-day exam? Like, that's strange, but I think it's good. I think as long as there's people that are well intentioned, that are, you know, want to go out there and help people, I kind of like that there's not so many barriers to do it. But I think it's great, download this freebie. I think it'd be very nice for people to kind of see how you did it and see like the path and that there's proof. And then I'm sure you do your homework before you make a big financial decision. There's got to be some that are more legitimate than others and provide more value. And so, but I do think it's such an interesting industry, and I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see the healthcare industry basically get turned on its head at some point. But this is
That
an
is
awesome
coming.
start. Yeah, I feel it. It's coming too. But how can people find your show or learn more about you if they're considering this path and they need somebody to kind of help them get to where they want to go?
Well, my podcast is freely available on Apple and Spotify, and we're on YouTube and everywhere. Just search for the Health Coach Power Community Podcast. Our Facebook group is available for those who are already enrolled in a school or already certified, because the group is very specific around helping people that are already in practice. But a lot of aspiring health coaches do listen to the podcast because they get a sense of like, here's what I'm in for. Here's what's going to be coming for me next. So I think that can be super helpful in addition to the mini course that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I agree. If you are an aspiring health coach, go binge this podcast. There's probably so much free information that you have just given away to anybody who is listening, who has access to podcasts, which is pretty much everybody. And I think that I think people discount how much you can learn from just listening to the stuff that's being given away by these exceptional experts in their field. So go listen to her podcast. And then if you are already on that path, definitely check out the Facebook group. It was such a pleasure to speak with you today, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And if you're looking to see if you can maybe change your career path, or you're interested in hiring a health coach and you want to see how well that fits into your budget, please head over to mistylynch.com. I would love to do some financial planning with you to see if we can make your future dreams come true. I'll talk to you all soon.